Welcome to the Double Black Diamond lesson today. Today we're going to be taking a shortcut. Through the woods to grandmother's house we go. A great story told once to me by my grandmother. She wanted me to come over, but I said no. She had no more soup for me. So today we are going to be taking the shortcut and graphing our lines using the slope intercept form. Come on down the mountain with me.
All right, thank you, Klaus. Today we are getting into our lesson 5 of our slope playlist. We are graphing using the slope intercept form today. Let's get our skis and our poles and hit the slopes together. Our objective today I will be able to use the slope intercept form of a linear equation to graph a line. So today, you're going to love today. It's a shortcut, just like Klaus said, through the woods to grandmother's house. It's going to save you a ton of time and a ton of work if you understand what we are doing today. So if you take a look at this one we did last lesson, you remember that we had to make our ordered pair chart, right? And we had to put our equation in, and then we had to, oops, getting kind of messy here, right? And then we had to guess, and let's say, okay, well, let's say I wanted to make x 0, what would y equal, right? And you had to solve for when x is 0, what y would equal. So for this case, y would equal -1, and then you had to come over here and graph that, right? And then let's just do one more, right? So let's do 1. So when x is 1, what was y? And you had to get rid of this, right? Which means you would get rid of that, or not rid of it, but you do the same thing on both sides. And so y equaled -2, right? And we were able to graph that, and we did it, and it took a little bit of time because we made this order pair chart. So how could we make this a little bit faster? Let me introduce you to your new favorite linear equation. Drum roll, please. The slope-intercept form. This is a linear equation written in a very specific way, okay? Y equals mx plus b. Now, the y obviously is your y coordinate, the x would be your x coordinate, your variables, right? The m, as you remember from earlier, in our slope playlist is going to stand for the slope, and the b is going to be your y-intercept. Okay, and I'll explain how you remember that in a second, but this is your new best friend. Okay, y equals mx plus b. It's called the slope-intercept form of the linear equation. Let's look at how we can use this, because what this is going to allow you to do is graph lines with, or graph linear equations without having to make your ordered pair chart. All right, okay, so this is our same exact linear equation that we just did, but now instead of making an ordered pair chart, what I want to do is I want to use my algebra knowledge to rewrite this in its linear equation, right? Or sorry, slope-intercept form. So y is going to equal, to get rid of x, I have to subtract an x, right? So I'm going to subtract an x here, which means I have to subtract an x here. So I'm going to have y equals -x, I'm just going to put it in front by making it negative, right? Minus 1. This is now your slope-intercept form. You don't have to make an ordered pair chart anymore, okay? So first, let's start with why this constant is called the y-intercept. So I'm going to show a little bit of work here just to prove to you why we call this the y-intercept, but this constant is called the y-intercept because it's where this linear equation, where the line crosses the y-axis. It's where it is intercepted or intersecting with the y-axis. Now, how do you know that, right? If I wanted to prove it. Well, if it's crossing the y-axis, that means your x would be 0, right? And so if I put 0 in for x, right, doesn't matter if it's negative or not, because that's not anything, I would have y equals -1. So you don't have to show work for that anymore if you understand that this is called the y-intercept. It's where the line crosses the the y-axis, right? So that's the first thing you want to know, right? So this is going to be I can already graph this right now. I know at -1 is where my line is going to cross the y-axis. Now, my coefficient, or the number in front of my x variable, that is my slope, right? Because if you remember, it was y equals mx plus b, the b being the y-intercept, and the m is going to tell me the slope of my line without me having to graph anything. Well, if I don't have anything in front of my x, I can assume that that is a 1, right? And so because it's negative, it's actually going to be a -1 slope, right? So, or 1 over 1. So I know I'm going negative, I'm going down this way. So I can go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. I can go back this way, right? Up 1 over to the negative left, right? Because it'd be -1, up 1 over left, up 1 over left. And I can graph this line without having to show any work on my ordered pair chart. All I had to do was rewrite it in my slope-intercept form, use my y-intercept, and use my slope, okay, to start there. Now, if you were wondering why this is a b, the way I remember that is because if I'm going to graph using this, I always begin at my y-intercept and then use my slope to build from there. That's how I remember that the b stands for y-intercept, because when you're graphing, that's where you want to begin. All right, so here we have another linear equation. It's not in slope-intercept form, but let's go ahead and write it in slope-intercept form. And that way, I can graph it without having to do an ordered pair. So first thing I want to do is get rid of my x by subtracting an x. So now I have -2y equals -x plus 8, because I put my subtracting x in front, right? And that's still +8. Now I need to undo my multiplication by dividing, right? And so if I divide both of these by -2, these cancel out. So -x divided by 2 would be +1/2, right? Because that's really a 1. Minus 8 divided by -2 would be negative, right? 4, because 8 divided by 2 equals 4. And I forgot my x. There we go. So here is my slope-intercept form. So again, I'm going to begin with -4, because I know when x is 0, y was going to be -4 because it's my y-intercept. And my slope here is +1 over 2. So for every one it goes up, it's going to go over 2. For every one it goes up, it's going to go over 2. For every one it goes up, it's going to go over 2. And I can go back the other way. If it goes down 1, it's going to go back -2, because -1 and -2 make a positive, right? Negative divided by negative make a positive. Down 1 over 2. And I've just graphed my line, and I'm not going to try to draw the line because I'm terrible at art, but I've just graphed my line using the slope-intercept form without having to make an ordered pair chart. Now I have an equation that's already in slope-intercept form, so I don't need to change it at all. It's already there for me to use. All I need to do is graph it. So I know that my slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M for mountain, right, like we talked about before, or slope. B is where you begin at the y-intercept for b. And so I know my constant here is a -5, so my y-intercept is going to be -5. I know my coefficient, or the number that is attached to the variable x, is -1/2, so my slope for this line is going to be -1/2. So for every 1 I go down, I'm going to move over 2 to the right. Or for every 1 I go up, I'm going to move 2 to the left to keep my slope negative. So if I go down 1, I'm going to be going over 2, right? If I go down 1, I'm going to be going over 2. My rise is -1. My run is 2. If I rise up 1, then I'm going to run backwards 2 to keep it negative. So rise up 1, go backwards 2, rise up 1, go backwards 2. And you can see that I made my linear equation because all my ordered pairs are in a straight line, right? I have used equivalent ratios to make a straight line, reminding you that the slope is the ratio of rise over run. So this is how you use slope-intercept form. Um, Obviously, we taught the linear equation with the ordered pairs first because we want you to see what you're doing. This is really a shortcut, but it's something that's awesome to use. Feel free to go ahead and start using this instead of making your ordered pair chart. Just write your linear equations in slope-intercept form, and then you can graph them without having to do the ordered pair chart. Thank you so much for checking out InstructaBeats. I got to go run and make sure Klaus is at his grandmother's house because that's where she wanted him to go today. Um, Please subscribe and like the video. If you didn't like it anyway. Check out our slope song at YouTube, at our channel, InstructaBeats Official. You can follow us at Instagram at InstructaBeats. Klaus and InstructaBeats out.